Well, hey folks, it's your old pal King Waspinator. Welcome back to Total Party Skills. Hit like and subscribe. I'm going to talk a little bit about the phenomenons of toxic fandom and fan baiting and stuff like that. I think this time I'm just kind of lay out a few little logic puzzles and I'll let y'all tease out the reasonings and stuff. Right off the bat, I feel, obviously the accusation of toxic fandom has been around for several years, but in the last few months, I think it's kind of crystallized, and that the group that has been labeled the toxic fans has seemed to have finally internalized this and has kind of accepted the role in a way, i.e., a lot of the reactions to Rings of Power and She-Hulk in particular, which I don't know if something's toxic, it's generally a sign that it's polluted with something, and things generally don't pollute themselves. And so, what is the source of the pollution that has turned a large segment of fandom toxic? I mean, the glib answer obviously is going to be J.J. Abrams. Every single major franchise he's had his hands on has been left terribly divided and arguing with itself, largely over the contents of empty mystery boxes, which is a subject I've gone off on before. He's hardly the only one. I'm not really sure if he's the origin point. He's just a really, really good example of the kind of Hollywood executive producer mentality that has led to all this. To a degree that there's fan baiting going on. It's hard to really prove 100% for sure that all this controversy over the last several years over movies and other kinds of nerd products is really just a gigantic marketing ploy. It's hard to say for sure. It's not like anyone's really come out and confessed that this has been the plan and here's how we devised the scheme, and who's the person who came up with this, all that kind of stuff. It's hard to like say 100% for sure that yes, this is happening. It only appears to be happening, but you don't bait something unless you want it to bite down on the hook, right? And so to a degree, everyone who's reacting to fan bait is feeding into the needs and wants of the people who are doing the baiting. They want you to react and get up in arms about stuff because it saves them potentially a lot of money on marketing. All you have to do is just make your mermaid black, put out one trailer, and then allow the internet to do most of the work for you in terms of spreading the word about your upcoming mermaid movie and all that kind of stuff. I see increasingly certain YouTube channels in particular will just declare things to be failures before they've even come out. Acting like, its ratings weren't as good as they had wanted, what epic failures, all that kind of stuff. Low ratings, low viewership on something really only hurts the broadcaster or the streamer, I guess, in the modern context. If your big budget show, heavily promoted, doesn't bring in the audience that was predicted, that affects potential ad revenue or whatever the equivalent is. In the modern day case, just getting someone to just stay parked on a website so it can just continuously, feed off your algorithmic data so they can then sell that to advertisers who can better target Doritos ads at you and stuff, is really the goal here. The people who make the show already got their money. The people who produced it, some of the executive producers might make their money on the back end, but for the most part, everyone involved in the making of Rings of Power, let's say, they got paid. The actors got paid, the set designers got paid, the costume designers got paid, the writers got paid, the director got paid, the grip got paid, the craft service table people got paid. They already all made their money. The people who are on the hook for the failure are the investors, and like I said, the actual broadcaster, because they're the one who's either having to devote time on an on-air broadcast show or space on a server if it's a streaming show. They're the ones who are left on the hook as to whether or not they're able to make their money off this thing that they just purchased or was handed to them to broadcast. The investors who actually finance the production of the show itself, they are talked into giving out their money based on a variety of metrics, various charts, predictions, forecasts, all that kind of stuff. They're often themselves extremely detached from fandom. You know, these are people who work over 100 hours a week in their offices, driving around, having meetings. They're not watching Daredevil. You know, they're not watching House of the Dragon. Their kids might, some of their relatives might. They might know of these things and have some kind of casual encounter with that kind of buzz through their limited, you know, group of people that are in their lives that they actually have any sort of genuine, real connection with. But for the most part, they're not wasting their own personal time watching this stuff or being into this stuff. If they were heavily into being nerds and the way that modern nerds have been conditioned to behave, then they never would have gotten to their position of being a high-powered television executive or a big bucks movie investor or any of that kind of stuff. And in order to be able to convince them to shell out some money, they need to see metrics. And unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on your point of view, internet engagement is kind of blind. You can present, you know, some paperwork to a potential investor saying, hey, look, you know, Rings of Power, look at all this engagement it's got. Look at all these search hits. Look at all these videos on YouTube talking about it. Look at all the people tweeting about it. Without actually looking at what the people are saying, it just looks like it's getting a shit ton of engagement. And so if you know, you're a business investor and you're just looking at the metrics, to you it'll seem like, hey, this is a fire bang hit. Let's throw some more money on it. Get that season 2 up and rolling. I want a piece of this action. And so to that end, that's another reason why the bait is there. It gets people agitated and talking about it. Talking about it to a degree that it would not have talked about if people were smart enough to go like, oh, that looks like crap, I don't want to watch it, and then never mention it again. But the incentive structure on YouTube in particular, you know, you got to jump in on whatever's algorithmically hot right now so you can get them views and them clicks and get some more subscribers. Speaking of which, hit like and subscribe and check out my books on Drive-Thru RPG. They need you to be angry because they know they have a lackluster product. You know, they're too afraid to try out new things, and even when they do bring up the gumption to actually grow a little bit of a creative spine and put out an original product, barely anyone will see it. You know, like maybe like 1 out of 10 original movies and premises, you know, like actually become hits, if even that many. You know, the incentive structure reinforces their need to take established, recognizable brands and try to repackage them. They can't just re-release the movie as it was. They can't just refilm it with the original script intact, but with new actors. They want the money for themselves. You know, the old thing from Star Trek, you know, and when Kurtzman took over, and how they got to make it 25% different so that they don't have to pay the original writers for their characters. They don't have to acknowledge the past. It's theirs now. This is my Star Trek because I made the nacelles on the Enterprise just a little bit thicker. And now I'm the one who invented the Enterprise, and I came up with Captain Kirk because Captain Kirk is now bisexual. And that's an original character. You know, people who, you know, notice that the quality of writing has fallen down over the decades compared to what science fiction used to produce in the 50s and 60s and even up into the 70s. You know, I feel that the secret there is that those people who wrote a lot of that stuff actually had hard lives. A lot of them were World War II vets. A lot of them got to watch their, you know, close friends and buddies get blown up to smithereens just a few feet away from them. And then they got to come home and write for the Twilight Zone, and because of the harsh realities they had physically been witness to, and the struggles and the morality and all that kind of stuff that they were privy to in real life, informed them to create good, interesting, thought-provoking stories. Modern day writers generally come from middle class or upper class backgrounds. They went straight from high school right into college teaching them how to write, college writing ethics, constantly encouraging people to be original and to break down, these old standard stale models of writing. You gotta come up with a twist. You gotta subvert expectations, all that kind of stuff. There's reasons why all those sorts of tropes are so commonplace in modern writing, and because these writers have had nothing but soft lives where, they've been exposed to other people's writings, but they've not really done anything for themselves. And so, go figure, we have pretty hollow, poorly thought out, uninspiring stories. And then they have to be grafted on top of products that once were inspiring and well thought out stuff. And, because of that, that ownership, the getting the original fan base to react negatively to, your new version also kind of helps sell the idea that this is now the new version. This is yours. Fuck those old fans. We got a bright, young, new crop of young fans on Twitter who are just hungry for a brand new version of Ghostbusters or whatever the hell it is. And, whether or not that pans out in truth, often doesn't. The youth audience doesn't necessarily show up to things. People constantly make points about how the millennials and the Zoomers are the poorest generation in generations, and they're saving their money and they don't have disposable income. It's then what a weird choice of demographic to try to chase to buy your merchandise and watch your stuff and wear the T-shirt and all that. It would seem wiser to continue to focus on the Gen Xers who have cash and like these things. But the Gen Xers already liked the versions that they had when they were young. They don't necessarily want or need the new versions. You can keep the brand alive by keeping, you can put out the new version of the show and get the youth audience. You can get the buzz by annoying the older audience to a point where they're talking about it all the time. You can sell a mixture of merchandise. I noticed that for all the promotion and talk over the years of, what they're building over there at CBS All Access / Paramount Plus with this new Star Trek franchise that they're launching with multiple shows and cartoon series and all this other stuff. Yet they still, sell the actual original versions of the, ship models and stuff because that's what the actual collectors want. And, I don't know. That's part of why it's hard to say definitively that this marketing scheme angle to the whole thing is true. There is also the other side of it, and it's purely the political angle. As much as a lot of people want to deny the politics have anything to do with this, our two political factions kind of are, dogs that like to chase each other's tails, and so they're constantly kind of shifting each other's positions based upon the position of their opposite. And, the sheer act of declaring that you don't like something makes it good in their eyes and vice versa. Once again, though, Hollywood seems to have decided to bank on the moral superiority of one side and want to take their side and want to impress their side and make it out we're with you, we believe in your youthful ethics and all that kind of stuff, while at the same time hemorrhaging money. But once again, it's the investors that are being fucked, and as long as the investors can continue to be tricked into thinking that this stuff is doing well just because of raw, blind engagement numbers, then there's no incentive that'll cause this to collapse. Also, just as a point of ownership, like I said, they needed to be 25% different. Declaring the older version to be either racist or sexist or transphobic is a way to justify why we had to make a new one. The old one was bad, don't you know? It was beloved and greatly remembered and cherished and all, but it was actually secretly bad and made by bad people. So we're gonna clean this one up, and this will be a socially acceptable version of that thing you loved. Finally, we don't want to be secretly teaching a bunch of young children to become fascists because they like Luke Skywalker or anything like that. We gotta put Rey in front of them so that they know they have a good role model to look up to and teach them good values to go on in life. The friends we met along the way and all that kind of stuff. I don't know. It's just an early morning rant on my part. I don't really think there's a conclusive point to this. Just that from the fish's point of view, if you're aware of the fact that they're sticking a big chummy piece of worm on a hook to try to coax you into biting down on it, isn't it in your best interest to avoid the hook? It's like a bullfight. The toxic fans are a part of the presentation. They need you. There is no bullfight without the bull. But the bull can't be allowed to win, and they will cheat. If the bull starts to get the upper hand, a bunch of other toreadors will come in and will start hacking at the bull and killing the bull and all that kind of stuff, or at least in the old-fashioned ways of bullfighting. They'll put the bull down if it gets out of hand, but yet they still need the bull to be angry so it can perform. And I kind of feel, as an analogy, that's kind of where fandom is. Now, I try to avoid falling into these traps. This causes me to occasionally make videos that kind of antagonize the very fan base that I'm trying to create, but I'm cautious about both wanting to have a cult of personality around me. I'm not looking for that. I also have noticed way too many YouTubers over the years whose attitudes and beliefs and content has been greatly warped by chasing the approval of their audience, and I don't want that either. You might not agree with everything I have to say. I might be acerbic, downright rude from time to time. Certainly have said things about various games or shows or movies that would certainly keep me from ever being able to be one of those YouTubers who gets interviews with creators of various products I've talked about. Because I'm just not that level of ass kissy about it. Everything's flawed. So you could, if you want to pick apart anything, you can pick apart anything. There's nothing that's perfect in the world. Nerds themselves kind of came automatically equipped for this whole kind of effect. Well before the internet, nerds were argumentative and combative. That tick that especially young nerds have, of the fact that we're raised often being told how smart we are by teachers and parents and other people, kind of leads to this kind of intellectual competitiveness where, oh, I know better than you. Oh, you forgot one little detail. Don't you remember that thing that was said in sentence 3 of appendix 4 of book 6? Kind of stuff going on. And so, it was a natural test bed for something like this to have emerged. I don't think you could have pulled this off with sports fandom in quite the same way. I mean, obviously they have their rivalries and stuff, but there isn't that actually kind of shit going on with them. That in nerddom, feeds into this phenomenon of toxic fandom. But just remember, if you are toxic, it's not your fault. Someone else made you that way, which perhaps might be victim thinking, which some of you disagree with, but you should at least keep it in mind. Who is the one that polluted the forest? It wasn't the trees. Anyway, until next time, stay waspinated. Check out Total Party Skills' publisher page on DriveThruRPG. Hit various buttons and stay out there.